My pregnant wife says her male coworker needs to be in the delivery room. I'm sitting in our nursery right now, surrounded by half-assembled baby furniture and boxes of tiny clothes, trying to process the conversation I just had with my wife Olivia. She's 7 months pregnant with our first child, a daughter we're naming Lily, and 30 minutes ago she told me her coworker Derek needs to be in the delivery room when our baby is born. Not wants to be there. Needs to be there. Those were her exact words. I asked her to repeat herself because I genuinely thought I'd misheard. She sat me down on the couch with this serious expression and explained that Derek has been her birth coach for the past 3 months, that he's been attending her prenatal classes while I've been working late, and that having him there for the actual delivery is essential for her emotional well-being and the baby's safe arrival. I'm a software engineer, been pulling 60-hour weeks trying to get promoted before the baby comes, so we'd have better insurance and more financial security. Apparently, while I was doing that, my pregnant wife was bonding with her coworker over breathing exercises and birth plans. Derek works in her marketing department, been at the company for about 2 years. I've met him maybe 3 times at company events. He's one of those guys who's always talking about wellness and mindfulness and optimal living. Olivia started getting really into that stuff around month 4 of the pregnancy, joining his meditation group at lunch, doing prenatal yoga sessions he recommended, following his advice about natural childbirth and holistic pregnancy. At first I thought it was harmless. Good even. She was happy, glowing, taking care of herself. But over the past few weeks, Derek's name has come up more and more. Derek says we should have a home birth. Derek thinks hospital interventions are traumatic for babies. Derek believes fathers need to educate themselves about the masculine energy they bring into delivery rooms. Every conversation about our birth plan somehow circles back to what Derek thinks, what Derek recommends, what Derek knows from his extensive research. When I pointed out that Derek doesn't have children, Olivia got defensive and said that's exactly why his perspective is valuable, because he studied birth objectively, without emotional attachment clouding his judgment, that he's taken courses, read books, attended workshops, that he understands the science and spirituality of birth in ways most people don't. I asked why she didn't tell me she wanted a birth coach, why we couldn't have done those classes together. She said I was always working and that when she did ask me to come, I said I was too busy. Which is technically true. I missed 2 classes because of critical project deadlines. But I didn't realize those 2 classes would somehow disqualify me from being present for my own child's birth. The conversation kept getting worse. She explained that Derek has been preparing for this for months, learning her breathing patterns, understanding her pain tolerance, studying the specific birth plan she wants to follow, that he knows exactly what kind of support she needs in the moment and what her signals mean. That bringing someone new into the delivery room at the last minute would disrupt the energy and potentially endanger the birth. Someone new. I'm the father of this baby. I'm her husband of 4 years. But apparently, I'm the disruptive new energy. When I said I was uncomfortable with another man being that intimate with my wife during labor, Olivia's expression changed. She got this disappointed, almost pitying look and said that's exactly the kind of possessive masculine energy Derek warned her about. That viewing my wife's body and birth experience as something I own or control reveals deep-seated misogyny that I need to work on before becoming a father. That if I truly loved her, I'd prioritize her needs over my ego. Every word felt like a punch. Suddenly, my completely reasonable boundary was evidence of character flaws I didn't know I had. I tried a different approach, asked about the hospital rules, whether they even allow multiple people in the delivery room. She said Derek already checked with the hospital administrator, pulled some strings through his wellness network, and got special permission for him to be there as her primary support person. Her primary support person. Not me. Him. When I asked what role that left for me, she hesitated, and then said I could be there too, obviously, but I'd need to respect Derek's position and follow his lead. That he'd be managing the birth environment, and I'd essentially be a secondary presence. I asked if she was seriously suggesting I take orders from her coworker during my daughter's birth. She said that's not how she'd phrase it, but yes. Derek would be the one making decisions in the moment based on what he felt was best for her and the baby. That his judgment wouldn't be compromised by emotional attachment like mine would be. That I needed to trust her to know what she needed and respect her choices about her own body and birth experience. The gaslighting was so smooth, I almost didn't recognize it. My concern about another man controlling my wife's labor was reframed as me trying to control her. My desire to be present as the father became evidence that I valued possession over partnership. Every boundary I tried to set got twisted into proof that I was exactly the problem Derek had apparently identified. I asked her point blank if something was going on between her and Derek. The explosion was immediate. How dare I? How dare I sexualize her pregnancy and her need for support? How dare I suggest that a man and woman can't have a professional wellness relationship without it being inappropriate? That my mind going there reveals exactly the kind of toxic masculinity she doesn't want around her daughter. That Derek is a deeply spiritual person who views birth as sacred, and I'd just insulted both him and her by implying anything untoward. I backed off because she was getting upset and I didn't want to stress the baby. But I can't stop thinking about how we got here. How did my pregnant wife develop such a close relationship with a male coworker that she now considers him essential to our most intimate family moment? When did his opinion start mattering more than mine? Why does every concern I raise get reframed as a personal failing? I've been supportive throughout this pregnancy. Maybe not perfect, definitely worked too much, but I've tried. I've rubbed her feet, assembled furniture, taken her to every major appointment I could make. I've read the pregnancy books, downloaded the apps, talked to the baby every night. But somehow, I'm the outsider now. The one who needs to earn his place in the delivery room by proving I'm worthy. By demonstrating I can follow Derek's lead and suppress my toxic masculine energy. Olivia left for Derek's apartment an hour ago. They're having a planning session about the birth, going over last-minute details. She said I wasn't invited because my energy earlier had been too negative, and she needed to recenter with someone who understood her vision. So I'm sitting here in a nursery, I painted myself, surrounded by a crib I built, holding a stuffed elephant I bought for a daughter I already love, wondering how I became a guest at my own child's birth. Tomorrow I'm supposed to meet with both of them, so Derek can explain the birth plan and my role in it. My role, in my daughter's delivery, decided by my wife's coworker. Part of me wants to put my foot down and refuse, but a bigger part is terrified that if I do, Olivia will actually choose Derek over me for this moment. That she'll ban me from the delivery room entirely, and I'll miss my daughter's birth because I couldn't swallow my pride and accept whatever scraps of involvement they decide to give me. I keep replaying the conversation, looking for the moment where things went wrong. Was it when I prioritized work? When I missed those classes? Or was it earlier? Some fundamental failing in our relationship that created space for Derek to slide in and position himself as the better option. Olivia's been texting me updates from Derek's place. Photos of herbal tea blends he's preparing for her labor. Screenshots of meditation tracks he curated. A picture of them practicing breathing exercises, his hands on her shoulders, both of them looking serene and connected. Each text feels like a test. Like she's waiting to see if I'll react badly, so she can use it as more evidence that I'm not ready for this. So I respond with supportive emojis and positive comments while dying inside. My best friend Connor thinks I'm insane for even considering this. I called him after Olivia left, and he spent 20 minutes yelling about boundaries and red flags. He thinks Derek is either having an affair with Olivia or is one of those controlling wellness cult guys who prey on vulnerable pregnant women. That no normal person inserts themselves this deeply into someone else's pregnancy. That I need to shut this down immediately or I'll regret it forever. But Connor doesn't understand the dynamic. Every time I try to push back, I become the villain. The controlling husband who won't let his wife make her own choices. The insecure man who views birth as a possession rather than a partnership. The toxic presence who's putting his ego above his wife's needs. Derek has built such a perfect framework that any resistance from me only proves his point. And Olivia believes him completely. She looks at Derek and sees enlightenment, support, spiritual guidance. She looks at me and sees work stress, missed classes, and masculine dysfunction that might traumatize our daughter. When did I become the problem? I've started going through her phone while she's sleeping. I know it's wrong, I know it's a violation, but I'm desperate to understand what's happening. The texts between Olivia and Derek go back months, hundreds of messages a day sometimes, long conversations about birth philosophy, pregnancy fears, relationship concerns, concerns about me. She's been sharing details about our marriage, our arguments, our intimacy issues since the pregnancy. Derek responds with wisdom and validation, gently suggesting that my reactions reveal deeper patterns she should be aware of. That his role isn't to judge, but to support her in seeing clearly. There are messages where she asks if it's normal to feel more connected to him than to me lately. He responds that pregnancy often clarifies what we really need, that the hormones strip away pretense and reveal truth, that her feelings are valid and she shouldn't feel guilty for recognizing who truly supports her growth. Messages where she worries about me being in the delivery room at all. Derek reassures her that they can manage my presence, that he'll create a contained space for me that doesn't disrupt the birth energy, that I can be there physically without being emotionally centered in the experience. And the most damning message, from 2 weeks ago, when I came home late from a work crisis. Olivia texted Derek at midnight saying she understood now why some women choose to do this alone. That my absence proved I wasn't ready to be a father. Derek responded that he'd be there no matter what. That she didn't have to go through this alone, that he'd been preparing to be everything she needed. The way he wrote it, the intimacy of it, felt like more than a wellness coach talking to a client. It felt like a man positioning himself as the replacement for a failing husband. But when I confronted Olivia about the messages, she said I was reading things wrong. That Derek was just being supportive. That the fact that I'd gone through her phone proved exactly the kind of possessive behavior he'd warned her about. That I'd violated her trust, and now she was questioning whether I could be trusted in the vulnerable space of the delivery room. Every move I make to protect my family pushes them further away. Every boundary I try to set becomes evidence of dysfunction. I'm trapped in a situation where the more I fight, the more I lose. Tonight is the meeting. Derek invited us to his place so we could go over the birth plan in detail and establish clear roles for everyone. Olivia is excited, says this will help me understand the vision and hopefully release some of my resistance. I don't want to go. Everything in me is screaming that this is wrong, that I'm about to sit through some manipulative presentation designed to marginalize me further. But if I don't go, I'm the one refusing to participate, the one not trying, the one who values his ego over his wife's birth experience. So I'm going. I'm going to sit in Derek's apartment and listen to him explain how my daughter's birth will be managed. I'm going to smile and nod while he outlines my permitted role. I'm going to watch my wife look at him with trust and admiration while she looks at me with disappointment and frustration. And I'm going to try not to break down completely, because at the end of this nightmare, there's a baby girl who deserves better than parents who can't figure out how to function together, a daughter who shouldn't have her birth turned into a power struggle between her father and some wellness guru who's decided he knows better. I keep telling myself that once Lily is born, this will all settle, that Olivia will see clearly again, that the hormones and the manipulation and whatever this is will fade and we'll be a family. But deep down, I'm terrified that this is just the beginning, that Derek isn't planning to disappear after the birth, that he's building himself into our family structure permanently. And I'm the only one who sees it happening. Update coming after tonight's meeting. I'm writing this from my car outside Derek's apartment building, and I'm shaking so hard I can barely hold my phone. What just happened in there was so much worse than I imagined. So much worse. I need to document this while it's fresh because I'm going to need evidence of how insane this has gotten. Derek lives in one of those modern lofts downtown, all exposed brick and plants everywhere, meditation cushions scattered around, the kind of place that screams, "I'm more enlightened than you." Olivia was already there when I arrived. She'd gone early to help him set up, which apparently involved arranging crystals around the living room and burning sage to clear my negative energy before I walked in. The smell hit me the second I opened the door, thick and cloying. Derek greeted me at the entrance with this serene smile and a hand on my shoulder. "Brother," he said, "I'm so grateful you're here. This is such an important step in your journey toward conscious fatherhood." I wanted to punch him immediately. Instead, I mumbled something about being glad to be included, which was apparently the wrong response because Derek's expression shifted slightly, and he exchanged a look with Olivia. "Included suggests you're separate from this process," he said gently. "You're not joining something external. You're stepping into your role within the sacred space we're creating. We're creating. Not me and Olivia. We, as in him and my wife." I sat down on the couch while they settled onto meditation cushions facing me. The power dynamic was immediate and intentional. They were together, grounded, spiritually aligned. I was separate, sitting higher, literally and figuratively out of sync with their energy. Derek pulled out a binder, professionally printed and organized, titled Lily's Sacred Birth Journey. He'd created a 40-page document about my daughter's delivery, complete with breathing exercises, visualization scripts, pain management techniques, and detailed role assignments for every person who'd be in the room. He opened to a page labeled Birth Team Structure and started explaining. Olivia would be the sacred vessel, obviously, the center of all energy and focus. Derek would be primary support, responsible for managing the birth environment, making decisions about interventions, communicating with medical staff, and ensuring the space remained spiritually protected. And me? I was listed as secondary presence with support function. My responsibilities included staying quiet unless specifically asked to speak, remaining physically distant unless invited closer, and following all directions from Derek immediately without question. If I caused disruption or brought negative energy, I could be asked to leave the room entirely. For my daughter's birth, I could be asked to leave by my wife's coworker. I tried to stay calm and asked what exactly constituted negative energy. Derek smiled like he'd expected this question and flipped to another page. Examples of disruptive masculine energy. The list included raised voices, unsolicited opinions, questioning decisions made by the primary support, touching the sacred vessel without explicit permission, displaying anxiety or fear, making demands about timing or medical procedures, and bringing up previous relationship conflicts. Basically, any normal human reaction to watching your wife in labor. When I pointed out that these were natural responses to a stressful situation, Derek nodded sympathetically. "Exactly, brother. Which is why we need to establish now whether you're capable of transcending your base instincts for the sake of your daughter's peaceful entry into the world. Some fathers can, some can't. There's no shame in acknowledging your limitations." Olivia was watching me carefully, and I could see she was waiting for me to fail this test, waiting for me to get angry or defensive so Derek could point to it as evidence. I took a breath and asked about my actual involvement. What was I allowed to do? Derek flipped to another page titled Secondary Presence Permissions. I could stand near the door or sit in a designated chair. I could offer water if Olivia requested it and Derek approved. I could take photos only during approved moments that Derek would indicate. I could hold the baby after birth once Olivia and Derek had completed the immediate bonding period, which could last anywhere from 20 minutes to 2 hours depending on the energy. Everything required Derek's approval. Everything. I asked Olivia directly if this was really what she wanted. She looked at Derek before answering, like she needed his permission to speak to her own husband. Then she said yes, this was exactly what she needed to feel safe and supported. That Derek had helped her realize how much her previous anxiety about birth was related to fear of my reaction, of me not being able to handle her pain, of me making the experience about my comfort instead of her needs. That having Derek manage the situation meant she could focus entirely on bringing Lily into the world without worrying about managing my emotions. I pointed out that I wasn't asking her to manage my emotions, that I just wanted to be present as her husband and our daughter's father. Derek cut in smoothly and said, "That's precisely the issue, brother. You're framing this through roles and ownership rather than service and surrender. The question isn't what you want from this experience, it's what you can offer to it. Right now, based on your energy, you're offering resistance and possession. That's not what Olivia needs." Olivia nodded along enthusiastically, like Derek was revealing profound truths. I felt like I was in a cult meeting. The language, the framework, the way they'd created this entire alternate reality where my reasonable boundaries were spiritual failures. I asked about hospital policy, whether the staff would actually allow Derek to make medical decisions for my wife. Derek smiled and pulled out another document. He'd gotten Olivia to sign a healthcare proxy designating him as her primary medical decision-maker during labor and delivery. In case she was unable to communicate her wishes, Derek would have legal authority to make choices on her behalf. Not me, her husband, him, her coworker. When I said that was absolutely insane and potentially dangerous, Derek's expression finally hardened. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're letting fear and ego override your wife's clearly stated needs. Olivia has chosen this arrangement because she trusts my judgment and knows I'll honor her birth plan above all else. Your reaction right now is proving you'd put your own comfort over her explicit wishes." Olivia reached over and took Derek's hand, actually took his hand, right in front of me, and said she was grateful he was protecting her vision when I wouldn't. That she'd been afraid to tell me earlier how much my presence stressed her out, how much she'd been dreading having me in the delivery room, how relieved she felt knowing Derek would be there to create a buffer between her and my toxic energy. The words destroyed me. My pregnant wife, the woman I'd loved and supported and built a life with, was sitting in another man's apartment holding his hand and telling me my presence at our daughter's birth was something she needed protection from. I stood up and said I was done with this, that I wasn't going to sit here and be systematically erased from my own family, that Derek could take his birth plan and his spiritual framework and shove it, and that I'd be in the delivery room as my wife's husband and my daughter's father whether he approved or not. Olivia started crying. Derek stood up and put his arm around her shoulders, comforting her while shooting me a look of deep disappointment. "Look what you've done," he said quietly. "Look at the fear and pain you've caused. This is why she needs protection from you." Olivia was sobbing now about how she'd tried so hard to help me understand, how she'd given me so many chances to grow. But I was too stuck in my toxic patterns. That maybe Derek was right about me needing to not be in the delivery room at all. That maybe the kindest thing for everyone, especially Lily, was for me to wait outside while Derek helped her birth our daughter safely. I left, just walked out while Derek held my crying wife and probably celebrated another victory in his systematic campaign to replace me. I'm sitting in my car trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wants to drive away and never come back. Let them have their spiritual birth experience without me. See how enlightened they feel when reality hits. But this is my daughter, my marriage, my family. I can't just abandon them even if they've already abandoned me. Connor says I need to talk to a lawyer immediately, that the healthcare proxy thing might not even be legal, that hospitals have rules about who can make decisions, that I have rights as the husband and father. He thinks Derek is running some kind of long-term manipulation game, that this isn't really about birth plans at all, that I need to document everything and prepare for the worst. My mom is convinced Olivia is having an affair, and this whole wellness guru act is a cover, that no woman replaces her husband with another man for something this intimate unless there's more going on, that I need to demand paternity testing and protect myself legally. But I know Olivia. At least, I thought I did. She's not a cheater. She's not cruel. She's just lost in whatever reality Derek has constructed. The pregnancy hormones, the isolation while I worked, the vulnerability of becoming a first-time mother. He's exploited all of it to position himself as her savior and me as her oppressor. And now I have less than 2 months before my daughter is born into this nightmare. 2 months to figure out how to break whatever hold Derek has on my wife. 2 months to reclaim my place in my own family. Or 2 months to accept that I've already lost them. I'm not ready to accept that. I won't. Tomorrow, I'm making calls. To our marriage counselor. To the hospital. To a lawyer if I have to. Derek wants a spiritual war? Fine. But he's about to learn that there are other kinds of power beyond sage smoke and meditation cushions. And I'm done playing by his rules. Update coming soon. I've spent the last 3 days doing detective work, and what I've found has my blood ice cold. Derek isn't just some wellness guru on a power trip. This is so much more calculated than that. After the disaster at Derek's apartment, I couldn't sleep. Kept replaying everything, looking for the angle I was missing. Then I remembered something. Derek said he'd pulled strings to get special permission from the hospital administrator for him to be in the delivery room. That phrasing stuck with me. Pulled strings. How would a marketing coordinator have connections with hospital administrators? So I started digging. Called the hospital where Olivia is registered to deliver and asked to speak to someone about visitor policies for labor and delivery. The nurse I talked to was confused when I mentioned Derek's special permission. "Sir, we don't give special permissions for delivery room guests. The mother chooses who's present, and we accommodate within safety limits. There's no administrator approval process. Your wife's coworker wouldn't need to pull strings. She just lists him on her birth plan." So Derek lied. But why lie about something so easily verifiable unless he was building credibility for other lies? I went through every company event photo I could find on social media, every mention of Derek at Olivia's workplace, started piecing together his history. He's been at the company 2 years, but his LinkedIn shows a gap before that. 3 years unaccounted for. I paid for a background check service, the kind that's probably legally questionable, but I was desperate. Derek's real name is Derek Lansing, but 15 years ago he went by Derek Mitchell. He's 43, not 35 like he told Olivia. And here's where it gets really dark. 10 years ago, Derek was married. His wife Catherine was pregnant with their first child. 8 months in, Catherine filed for an emergency restraining order. The court documents are public record. I found them through the county clerk's website. Catherine stated that Derek had become increasingly controlling during her pregnancy, inserting himself into every medical decision, insisting on being present for all appointments, eventually convincing her to sign a healthcare proxy, making him her primary medical decision-maker. Then things escalated. Derek started making decisions without her consent, changed her birth plan at the hospital without telling her, arranged for her to have an elective C-section she didn't want because he decided it was safer based on his research. When Catherine pushed back, he used the healthcare proxy to override her wishes. She ended up having major surgery she'd explicitly refused. The psychological trauma, combined with Derek's increasing control over every aspect of her recovery and the baby's care, led to severe postpartum depression. Catherine's statement described Derek as obsessed with being the primary parent, with making all decisions about the baby, with positioning himself as the authority on everything related to their child. He'd convinced her she was incompetent, unstable, not ready for motherhood. Eventually, Catherine's family intervened. They helped her get therapy, helped her see the manipulation, helped her file for divorce and sole custody. The restraining order was granted. Derek was ordered to supervised visitation only based on concerns about his controlling behavior and emotional abuse. He lost everything: his wife, his child, his credibility. The court documents include a psychological evaluation describing Derek as having a pathological need for control, masked as caregiving, specifically targeting vulnerable women during pregnancy when they're most susceptible to suggestion and manipulation. That he views himself as a superior parent before a child is even born and systematically undermines the mother's confidence to position himself as essential. The psychologist's testimony was damning. Derek doesn't see pregnant women as people with their own agency. He sees them as vessels he can manage and improve. His wellness persona is a recruitment tool. He finds vulnerable pregnant women, offers spiritual guidance and support, then gradually takes over every aspect of their pregnancy and birth experience. It's not about care, it's about power. About playing God with other people's children. And now he's doing it to Olivia. The pattern is identical. The wellness introduction, the meditation and yoga, the gradual positioning as the pregnancy expert, the systematic undermining of the husband, the healthcare proxy, the birth plan that centers him instead of the father. He's running the exact same playbook he ran on Catherine. I'm not the dysfunctional husband with toxic energy. I'm the obstacle he needs to remove. I printed everything. Every court document, every psychological evaluation, every piece of Catherine's testimony. Then I tracked down Catherine herself through Facebook. She's remarried now, living in Oregon with her husband and 2 kids. I sent her a message explaining my situation. She called me within an hour. The conversation lasted 90 minutes. She cried. I cried. She told me Derek destroyed the first year of her son's life, that she has permanent physical scars from a C-section she never wanted, and psychological scars from believing she was incompetent as a mother because Derek had convinced her so thoroughly. That even now, 13 years later, she struggles with trusting her own judgment about her kids because Derek spent months training her to doubt herself. She said Derek is brilliant at finding women at their most vulnerable. That pregnancy is his hunting ground because hormones and physical changes make women question themselves anyway. That he swoops in with answers and certainty and spiritual frameworks that feel supportive but are actually cages. That by the time you realize what's happening, he's built such an elaborate reality that fighting back feels like self-destruction. She told me about the healthcare proxy specifically. Derek's entire strategy depends on that document. Once he has legal authority to make medical decisions, he can override everyone. He can force interventions, refuse interventions, control who's in the room, make choices that serve his agenda rather than the mother's well-being. In Catherine's case, he'd used it to schedule a C-section she'd explicitly said she didn't want, then convinced the hospital staff that she was too emotional to make rational decisions and they should listen to him as her healthcare proxy. She'd woken up from surgery feeling violated and betrayed, with Derek holding her baby and looking at her like she should be grateful. Catherine said, I need to get Olivia to revoke that proxy immediately, that it's the linchpin of his power. Without it, he's just a coworker with opinions. With it, he can legally control my wife's medical care. She also warned me that confronting Olivia directly would backfire, that Derek will have prepared her for this exact moment. He'll have framed any accusations as jealousy and fear. He'll have positioned himself as the one who truly understands her, while I'm revealed as controlling and desperate. That I need to approach this strategically. Get proof, document everything, involve professionals who can see the manipulation objectively. Most importantly, Catherine said I need to talk to Olivia's doctor directly. That medical professionals are trained to spot coercive control in pregnancy. That if I present the evidence to her OB, they might be able to intervene in ways I can't. I called Olivia's obstetrician the next morning. Dr. Reyna has been seeing Olivia throughout the pregnancy. I explained that I was concerned about a third party exerting undue influence over my wife's medical decisions and asked if we could meet. She agreed immediately, said she actually had some concerns of her own. The meeting was yesterday. I brought all the documentation about Derek, the court records, Catherine's testimony, everything. Dr. Reyna reviewed it carefully while I explained what had been happening, how Derek had positioned himself as the primary decision-maker, how Olivia had signed a healthcare proxy without really understanding what it meant. Dr. Reyna's expression got darker as she read. She told me this explained a lot, that Derek had been present at the last 3 appointments, that Olivia had started deferring to him for answers about her own symptoms and preferences. That Derek had tried to hand her a revised birth plan at the last visit, one that included procedures Dr. Reyna hadn't discussed with Olivia directly. That she'd noticed Olivia seemed anxious and uncertain in ways she hadn't been earlier in the pregnancy. Dr. Reyna said she couldn't share Olivia's medical information with me without consent, but she could tell me that healthcare proxies during labor and delivery are concerning to medical professionals precisely because of situations like this. That hospitals are required to verify that the person giving medical consent is doing so freely and understands the implications. That if there's evidence of coercion or manipulation, they have an obligation to protect the patient. She said she'd be flagging Olivia's file with concerns about third-party influence, and that when Olivia comes in for her next appointment, Dr. Reyna will be asking questions directly about the healthcare proxy and Derek's role. That she'll be documenting whether Olivia seems to be making decisions autonomously or under pressure. She also told me something that made my stomach drop. The birth plan Derek had tried to submit included requests for minimal pain management even if Olivia asked for it, restrictions on certain medical staff being present, and specific timing for interventions that didn't align with standard medical practice. It looked like someone trying to control the delivery for their own purposes, rather than supporting the mother's choices. Dr. Reyna said she'd already decided to reject several elements of that plan as not in Olivia's medical best interest. That Derek had argued with her about it, claiming he knew what Olivia really wanted better than she did. That was a massive red flag. When I left Dr. Reyna's office, I felt like I finally had ammunition. Not just emotional appeals, but documented evidence and professional backing. But I still needed to figure out how to get through to Olivia. Catherine had warned me that direct confrontation wouldn't work, so I tried something else. I called Olivia's best friend, Monica. Monica and Olivia have been close since college. She's been weirdly absent during the pregnancy, and I'd assumed she was just busy with her own life. Turns out she'd been pushed out. Monica told me she'd tried to raise concerns about Derek months ago. That she'd noticed Olivia becoming isolated from her friends and family, spending all her time with Derek, starting to talk in that weird wellness language that didn't sound like her. When Monica suggested Olivia was getting too dependent on Derek, Olivia had shut her down completely. Said Monica was being unsupportive and jealous of the spiritual growth Olivia was experiencing. That Monica's negative energy wasn't welcome during this sacred time. Derek had been present for that conversation. He'd told Olivia that real friends support your evolution and that people who try to keep you small aren't meant to be in your life during transformative periods. Olivia had essentially cut Monica off after that. Monica said she'd been waiting for Olivia to come to her senses, but was starting to realize that might not happen. She was relieved I'd finally noticed something was wrong, said she'd been trying to figure out how to intervene without making things worse. I shared everything I'd found about Derek with Monica. She was horrified, but not surprised. Said she'd had bad feelings about him from the start, but couldn't articulate why. Now it made sense. We made a plan. Monica would reach out to Olivia casually, suggest getting together for a prenatal spa day, just the two of them. No pressure, no confrontation, just friendship. While they were together, Monica would gently start asking questions about the birth plan, about Derek's role, trying to get Olivia to articulate her own feelings rather than repeating Derek's talking points. Meanwhile, I'd be meeting with a family lawyer to understand my legal rights regarding the healthcare proxy and what I could do to protect both Olivia and Lily. The lawyer, Ruth Castellano, was recommended by Connor. She specializes in reproductive rights and family law. When I explained the situation, she immediately recognized it as reproductive coercion. She said healthcare proxies are meant for situations where someone is genuinely incapacitated and unable to make decisions. Using one to override a competent adult's autonomy during childbirth is legally questionable, especially when there's evidence the proxy was obtained through manipulation. Ruth said I had several options. I could file for an emergency hearing to have the proxy revoked based on evidence of coercion. I could present the documentation to the hospital's legal department and request they refuse to honor it. Or I could work with Olivia's medical team to create a situation where the proxy's necessity is questioned directly with Olivia present. The challenge was timing. We had 6 weeks until Olivia's due date. Any legal action would alert Derek and probably cause him to accelerate his manipulation. Ruth suggested a multi-pronged approach. Get Monica to plant seeds of doubt. Get Dr. Reyna to continue documenting concerns. Get the hospital's patient advocate involved. Build a case that when the moment comes, multiple systems will be in place to protect Olivia's autonomy, even if she can't protect it herself. I agreed to all of it. But that night, everything accelerated. Olivia came home late from another session with Derek. She walked into our bedroom where I was reviewing legal documents and told me she needed to talk. The look on her face was strange, not the defensive anger I'd gotten used to. Something else. She sat down on the bed and said Derek had helped her reach a difficult decision, that she'd been struggling with it for weeks, but now had clarity. She wanted a trial separation, starting immediately. She said I needed to move out so she could focus on preparing for Lily's birth without my negative energy contaminating the space. That Derek had offered her his spare room so she wouldn't be alone. That she'd already started packing some of my things. I asked if she was seriously planning to move in with Derek. She said it wasn't like that I was sexualizing a spiritual support relationship again, that this was exactly why we needed space. That Derek understood her needs in ways I couldn't, and she needed to be in an environment where her choices were respected. I told her I'd found out about Derek's past, about Catherine, the restraining order, the psychological evaluation. She looked at me with such disappointment. Derek warned me you might try this. He said when men like you feel control slipping, you resort to character assassination. He told me you'd probably manufacture some story about his past to turn me against him. That this was the final test of whether I'd choose growth or regression. He warned me. Derek had prepared for this exact scenario. He'd preemptively framed any truth I might bring to Olivia as fabricated attacks. I pulled up the court documents on my laptop, showed her Catherine's testimony, the psychological evaluation, the restraining order. Proof that this wasn't manufactured, it was public record. Olivia looked at the documents for maybe 30 seconds before pushing the laptop away. She said she didn't need to read hit pieces written by Derek's abusive ex-wife during a contentious divorce. That Derek had already told her about his previous marriage, how his ex had been mentally unstable and had made false accusations to gain custody advantage. That he'd been transparent about his painful past with her. Every truth I'd uncovered, Derek had already spun. Every piece of evidence he'd already explained away. He'd known I'd eventually start digging. So he'd gotten ahead of it by telling Olivia his version first, positioning the real story as the fake one and his lies as truth. I begged Olivia to talk to Catherine directly. To hear from another woman who'd been through exactly what she was going through. She said she wouldn't participate in helping me harass Derek's ex-wife to validate my insecurity. That I'd crossed so many lines now that she wasn't sure our marriage could recover. That maybe this separation was actually permanent. She left that night, packed a bag, called Derek to pick her up, and moved into his apartment. I sat in our empty house surrounded by baby furniture and pregnancy books and the life we were supposed to be building, realizing I'd just lost my wife to the man who'd been systematically destroying our family for months. And I had 6 weeks to get her back before he was there for my daughter's birth while I was not. Update coming. I haven't slept in 3 days. Olivia's been at Derek's for almost a week now, and every call, every text, every attempt to reach her gets filtered through him. I can feel her slipping away. But then something happened that changed everything. Monica came through. She'd been texting Olivia casually all week, keeping things light, not pushing. Just checking in, sending funny memes, being the friend Olivia used to have before Derek. Eventually, Olivia agreed to meet for lunch, just the two of them. Monica picked a quiet place, kept the conversation easy at first, asked about nursery plans, baby names, all the normal pregnancy talk. Then she gently asked how Olivia was feeling about everything. Not the birth plan, not Derek, just everything. And something in Olivia cracked. Monica recorded the conversation with Olivia's permission, said she wanted to remember this special time. But really, she was documenting everything in case we needed it. I've listened to that recording probably 50 times. You can hear Olivia's voice, exhausted and uncertain. She told Monica she was overwhelmed, that everything felt too complicated, that she wasn't sure anymore what she wanted versus what she was supposed to want. Monica asked what she meant by supposed to want. Olivia hesitated, then said Derek had such clear vision for how the birth should go, and he'd put so much work into preparing, that she felt obligated to follow through even though some of it made her uncomfortable. When Monica asked what made her uncomfortable, Olivia listed things. She didn't actually want a healthcare proxy. Derek had convinced her it was necessary, but signing it had felt wrong. She missed me. She hated that we were separated. But Derek said working through these feelings was part of her growth, and she needed to trust the process. She was scared about the birth, not the pain, but the situation. Having Derek there felt important, but also strange. Having me secondary felt cruel, but also somehow necessary according to the framework Derek had built. Everything felt simultaneously right and wrong, and she didn't know which feeling to trust anymore. Monica, bless her, asked the perfect question. If Derek disappeared tomorrow and you had to make all these decisions alone, what would you choose? Olivia cried. Said she'd choose me. She'd want me as her primary support. She'd want a normal birth plan. She'd want her husband beside her, not her coworker. But Derek had explained so many times why those choices came from fear and conditioning rather than truth. that her instinct to default to traditional roles revealed she hadn't fully deconstructed her internalized patriarchy, that wanting me there in the way she wanted me there was actually a symptom of unhealthy attachment. Monica asked if Olivia could hear how messed up that sounded, that someone had convinced her that wanting her husband at their child's birth was a psychological problem. The silence on the recording is devastating. You can hear Olivia processing, maybe for the first time, how warped her thinking had become. Then she said she had to go, that Derek was expecting her back for an afternoon meditation session. But she asked Monica not to tell me about their conversation, said she needed to figure some things out on her own first. Monica told me everything immediately. We both knew this was the opening we'd been waiting for, the crack in Derek's control. But we had to be careful. Pushing too hard now could drive Olivia back into Derek's narrative. Ruth, the lawyer, suggested we use Olivia's admission that she didn't want the healthcare proxy as grounds for legal action. If she'd expressed to Monica that she signed it under pressure and now regretted it, we could petition the court to have it revoked on the basis that it didn't represent her true wishes. We filed that afternoon. Emergency motion to revoke the healthcare proxy and restore my legal rights as spouse and father. The hearing was scheduled for 4 days out, expedited because of the pregnancy timeline. Derek found out within hours. Olivia called me screaming, said I'd gone behind her back, weaponized her friendship with Monica, violated her trust in the most fundamental way. That I'd proven everything Derek had said about me being controlling and manipulative, that she wanted nothing to do with me, that I'd guaranteed Derek would be the only support person at the birth because she couldn't trust me anymore. I tried to explain that I was protecting her from someone dangerous, that Derek had done this before, that she'd told Monica she didn't actually want the proxy arrangement. She said I was twisting things, that of course she had complicated feelings, pregnancy is complicated, but that didn't give me the right to use legal force to override her decisions, that she'd told Monica things in confidence and I'd turned it into ammunition. The call ended with her saying she'd be at the hearing to testify that she wanted the proxy, wanted Derek, wanted me out of her life. That I'd destroyed whatever chance we had at reconciliation. I was devastated. But Ruth said Olivia's reaction was textbook for someone under coercive control. That victims often defend their abusers most fiercely, right when intervention happens. That we needed to stay the course. The hearing was brutal. Olivia showed up with Derek, both of them presenting a united front. She testified that she'd made the healthcare proxy decision freely, that Derek was her chosen support person, that my legal action was harassment and proof of controlling behavior. Derek testified about his training, his preparation, his commitment to honoring Olivia's wishes, made himself sound like a dedicated birth advocate rather than a predator. Our side presented Catherine's testimony via video call. She explained the pattern, the manipulation tactics, the identical progression from wellness support to complete control, showed the parallel between her experience and Olivia's. Olivia sat there stone-faced, but I could see something shifting. Catherine wasn't angry or vindictive. She was sad and honest and desperately trying to save another woman from what she'd endured. We presented Dr. Reyna's concerns about the birth plan, about Derek's attempts to override medical judgment, about Olivia's increasing deference to Derek's decisions. We presented the recording of Olivia telling Monica she didn't actually want the proxy arrangement. And we presented the psychological evaluation from Derek's previous case, the expert testimony that this was a pattern of predatory behavior. The judge listened to everything carefully. Then she asked Olivia directly, looking her in the eye, whether she truly wanted Derek Lansing to have authority to make medical decisions on her behalf during childbirth, even if those decisions conflicted with her stated wishes, even if they conflicted with her husband's input, even if they overrode her own voice. Olivia opened her mouth to answer, but Derek leaned over and whispered something to her first. The judge saw it. Her expression hardened. "Mr. Lansing," she said sharply, "step back from the witness." Olivia looked rattled, glanced at Derek, then back at the judge. The judge asked again, "In your own words, without consulting anyone else, do you want this man to have power over your medical care?" Olivia started crying, said she didn't know anymore, that everything was so confusing, that she'd thought she wanted this, but now she wasn't sure. That she was scared and overwhelmed and didn't know who to trust. The judge made her ruling immediately. Healthcare proxy revoked pending further evaluation. Olivia's medical decisions would be her own, with standard spousal rights restored to me as backup only if she was genuinely incapacitated. Derek was barred from making any medical decisions on Olivia's behalf. He could be present at the birth only if Olivia explicitly requested it, and hospital staff would verify that request independently without his presence during the conversation. The judge also ordered a temporary restraining order. Derek was to maintain distance from Olivia for 72 hours to give her space to think clearly without his influence. Violation would result in contempt charges. Derek's face went from serene to furious in seconds. He started to argue, but his lawyer shut him down. Olivia was sobbing, looked at Derek like she was drowning and he was the life raft being pulled away. He tried to go to her, but security stepped in. As they escorted him out, he locked eyes with me. The mask was completely gone. Pure hatred. "You have no idea what you've done," he said. "She needed me. You've destroyed everything." Then he was gone. Olivia collapsed into a chair, hyperventilating. I wanted to go to her, but Ruth advised me to give her space. Let the hospital patient advocate talk to her first, someone neutral. The advocate sat with Olivia for an hour. Then Dr. Reyna arrived, having been alerted by the court. They talked to Olivia without me present, without Derek, just medical professionals, and an advocate helping her process what had happened. When they were done, Dr. Reyna came out and told me Olivia had agreed to voluntary admission to their high-risk pregnancy unit for observation. Not because anything was medically wrong, but because she was emotionally fragile, and they wanted her in a safe environment while she figured things out. She'd asked that I not visit yet. She needed time. I agreed, went home to our empty house, and finally broke down completely. I'd saved Olivia from Derek's legal control, but I might have lost her in the process. 3 days later, the restraining order expired. I expected Derek to immediately contact Olivia. Instead, something else happened. Dr. Reyna called me, said I needed to come to the hospital right away. When I arrived, Dr. Reyna led me to a private office and closed the door. During Olivia's stay, they'd been monitoring her closely. Not just vital signs, but behaviors. They'd noticed she was anxious, checking her phone constantly, seeming worried. So they'd asked her about it. Olivia had admitted she was afraid Derek would be angry about the court order, that he'd told her before that if she ever betrayed his trust, there would be consequences, that his love and support were conditional on her following the path he'd laid out. The hospital's domestic violence advocate recognized the language immediately. Conditional support, consequences for betrayal. These were abuse indicators. They'd interviewed Olivia more deeply about her relationship with Derek, about how it started, how it progressed, how it made her feel. And Olivia, separated from Derek's physical presence for the first time in weeks, started to see clearly. She told them about the isolation from friends and family. The constant criticism of me disguised as spiritual guidance, the way Derek made her question every instinct she had, the growing fear that if she didn't follow his plan perfectly, he'd abandon her, that his support had strings attached, that she'd become terrified of disappointing him. Dr. Reyna said they'd diagnosed Olivia with acute stress response, likely from prolonged psychological manipulation, that she was showing classic signs of trauma bonding with Derek, that the pregnancy hormones had made her more vulnerable to his tactics. But now, with distance and professional support, Olivia was starting to process what had happened to her. She wanted to see me. I walked into Olivia's room and she looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Pale, exhausted, her hand on her pregnant belly. She started crying the moment I sat down. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry. I thought he was helping me. I thought you were the problem. I couldn't see what he was doing." I held her while she sobbed, told her it wasn't her fault, that Derek was a professional manipulator, that she'd been targeted during the most vulnerable time of her life. She asked how she'd let it get so bad, how she'd almost let a stranger control her child's birth, how she'd pushed me away and nearly destroyed our marriage. I told her we'd figure it out together, that what mattered now was keeping both her and Lily safe, that we'd deal with everything else later. Over the next week, Olivia stayed in the hospital's pregnancy unit, not just for physical monitoring but for intensive therapy. They brought in a psychologist who specialized in coercive control. Helped Olivia understand the manipulation tactics Derek had used, how he'd exploited her pregnancy fears and isolated her systematically, how his entire approach was designed to make her dependent on him and doubt everyone else, especially me. Olivia grieved for the pregnancy experience she'd lost to Derek's manipulation, grieved for the damage to our marriage, grieved for how close she'd come to letting him be present for the most intimate moment of her life. But she also got angry, really angry. Started talking about pressing charges, about warning other women, about making sure Derek never did this to anyone else. Ruth, the lawyer, came to meet with us, explained that what Derek did was legally murky. Reproductive coercion is recognized in some jurisdictions but hard to prosecute. However, obtaining a healthcare proxy through manipulation might constitute fraud, and if we could prove he'd been planning to make medical decisions against Olivia's actual wishes, that could be assault. We decided to start with a formal complaint to his employer. Ruth helped Olivia draft a detailed account of Derek's behavior, including the healthcare proxy, the isolation tactics, the inappropriate boundary violations for a coworker. The company's HR department took it seriously, launched an investigation. Turned out Olivia wasn't the first. 2 other women at the company had complained about Derek's behavior in the past year. Both had been pregnant. Both had described him inserting himself into their prenatal care, offering unsolicited advice, trying to position himself as a birth coach. HR had dismissed it as friendly concern. But 3 reports of the same pattern? That was a problem. Derek was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. But he wasn't going quietly. He started a social media campaign, posted about being persecuted for supporting women's birth choices, about husbands who use legal systems to control their wives, about wellness advocates being targeted by patriarchal institutions. His followers, other people in the wellness community, started harassing me online, calling me abusive, saying I'd traumatized my pregnant wife, that I'd used courts to override her autonomy. The narrative Derek was spinning made him the victim and me the villain. It was gaslighting on a public scale. But then Catherine stepped in. She wrote a long post detailing her experience with Derek, named him specifically, explained the pattern, the manipulation, the lasting trauma, tagged me and Olivia, and said she was speaking up so no one else would suffer. Other women came forward, not just Catherine, but 3 more from different cities, different time periods, all pregnant or new mothers when they'd met Derek. All had similar stories: the wellness introduction, the gradual takeover, the isolation, the control. One woman's story was almost worse than Catherine's. Derek had convinced her to have a home birth against medical advice. She'd nearly died from complications. He'd refused to call emergency services when she started hemorrhaging because he said hospital intervention would traumatize the baby. Her husband had called anyway, saving her life. Derek had disappeared before the ambulance arrived. The social media tide turned. Derek's employer fired him. Filed their own report with the police about workplace misconduct. Several women filed restraining orders, and Olivia and I, working with Ruth, filed for a permanent restraining order with enhanced provisions given the pregnancy situation. The hearing was different than the first one. Olivia testified herself this time, clear and strong. Described exactly what Derek had done, how he'd manipulated her, how terrified she was that he'd been planning to control her daughter's birth. The judge granted the order immediately. 500 feet minimum distance. No contact directly or through intermediaries. No social media posts about Olivia or the baby. Any violation would result in immediate arrest. Derek showed up to the hearing representing himself since his lawyer had dropped him. He tried to argue, to explain his spiritual mission, to paint himself as a misunderstood advocate. The judge cut him off. "Mr. Lansing, you have a documented pattern of predatory behavior toward pregnant women. You obtain their trust, isolate them from support systems, and attempt to control intimate medical decisions. This court finds your behavior constitutes harassment, stalking, and attempted reproductive coercion. Stay away from this family, or you will go to jail." Derek left the courthouse ranting about persecution and conspiracy. But he'd lost. Lost his job, his reputation, his ability to access vulnerable women through wellness communities. Multiple civil suits were being filed. Criminal investigations were starting. His life was imploding. Meanwhile, Olivia came home. We started marriage counseling, real counseling, with a therapist who understood manipulation and trauma. Worked through the damage Derek had caused. Olivia's guilt was overwhelming at first. She couldn't understand how she'd let it happen. Dr. Patel, our therapist, explained that pregnancy creates a perfect storm for manipulation. Hormones affect judgment and emotional regulation. Physical changes create vulnerability and uncertainty. The weight of impending parenthood creates fear that predators exploit. Derek had waited for precisely the right moment, then moved in with precision. It wasn't Olivia's fault. It was calculated predation. We worked on rebuilding trust. I had to forgive her for pushing me away, for believing Derek's lies about me, for nearly excluding me from Lily's birth. She had to forgive herself. Olivia would panic about Derek somehow getting information about her, about him showing up at the hospital. We implemented security measures, changed phone numbers, locked down social media, alerted hospital security about the restraining order. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.